Now, to me, that was beautiful. Now, to people who have an interest in organic recycling, some of you may have counted how much contamination was in that truck. There was no more than 5 pieces of plastic. So it's a huge achievement. Now, we've got that happening across 3 states. We're collecting from hundreds of sites across Victoria, Perth and Brisbane, and it's basically zero contamination. Now, to get to that point, it's been a huge exercise, and we've had some real champions in the business. And with all successful programs, there's lots of fathers to success. But one thing, you can't really pick one strategy, but one thing that we can all agree on is that without waste auditing, we would have never got to first base. And the other thing that's critical to understand, you guys are seeing a program that's 3 years old. It's a mature program. 3 years ago, it was a bloodbath. That customer, within the first 4 weeks, had trucks rejected in Melbourne, Brisbane and Perth. It was on the verge of collapse. So for us to take a bloodbath and get this program to where it is today, 3 years down the track, waste auditing was a critical component in that. Now, if your goal is to improve recycling rates, reduce contamination and avoid landfill, well, waste auditing is for you guys. I'm Manatakis, and my role within our business is to help our customers achieve their goals in resource recovery. Now, there's a real reality here. Now, most people here have a goal of driving efficiency, reducing waste, and reducing costs. Now, if you don't know what's in your waste bin, well, how do you do that? You can still do it, but it's a really difficult exercise, because if you don't know the contents of your bin, you only have 2 levers. And those 2 levers are, your first lever is, let's get a bigger bin. That's going to drive efficiency. That's going to reduce costs. Correct, right? And your other lever is, if you don't know what's in your bin, is to actually improve transport. So let's transport things in a bigger truck. Let's get B doubles. Let's do these 2 simple things. Now, at some point, you hit a threshold, and there's only so much productivity and cost reductions and efficiencies you can achieve. Right? So that's a real reality. But if you look at the flip side, if you knew what's in your bin, you could say to yourself, well, I know the contents of my general waste stream. I can introduce resource recovery programs. I can divert things away from the general waste stream. So you're achieving your efficiency goals, you're achieving your resource recovery goals, and you're reducing costs. If you know what's in your bin, you can introduce education programs to change the profile of that waste stream. So once again, you can reduce costs, drive efficiencies and hit your goals. And then the third thing, the third lever, is that if you know what's in your bin, well, guess what? You can negotiate better. You can get better rates. You're in control. So as a waste manager, you have a choice. If you don't understand what's in your bin, it's really, you're up against it. But if you have a good understanding of what's in your bin, you can take strategic steps and actions to obtain your goals, whether it is to reduce costs or drive efficiency or hit recycling targets.
Sorry, just jump the microphone for the recording.
Sorry, mate. This better? Sorry. All right. Mate, all waste audits are not made equal. And what I'm going to do today is help you, secure waste audits that are superior and get you the goals that you want to achieve. Now, you're going to hear from, I'm sure you've heard from many waste auditors. And their definition of a waste audit is, it's a snapshot in time. Now, there are lots of good audits out there. And that's what they do. They give you a snapshot, but that's it. How many good waste audits have you seen just sit on bookshelves? And it's sad. But an awesome waste audit tells you, why did that waste originate? What were the drivers behind it? So everyone here wants awesome waste audits, because what you want to do is you want to drive change. So we're going to talk about a few of the things that you can do to drive change. Now I'm going to take you through the Taylor model, right? Now this model here looks at your waste audits as an ecosystem. Now these, when you take a step back and say, okay, it's more than just a material, right? There is a culture behind that actually generated that waste. And there's also a system that caused the generation of that waste. And there's also some psychology and logic that have contributed to that waste. So the moment you start looking at waste as an ecosystem, you have a very different perspective. Now I'm going to take you through an example. Now this is a large customer, and that's their end product. It's zero contamination. Now the way they got there is that they took a step back and they looked at the culture of how was this waste originally generated. So once they had an understanding of the culture, they tweaked the culture and the behaviours around the quality control sweeps of their fruit and vegetables and also their bread. So they tweaked the culture. And then the next thing that they looked at was the actual infrastructure and systems. So they looked at the infrastructure and they changed the infrastructure. So they were able to put the right infrastructure in place to drive resource recovery. And then the final thing that they did, they asked themselves, why do we have this problem and challenge here? And it was because they had some very strong logic and reasoning behind it. Now, you know what? That reasoning and logic was correct 6-7 years ago. The world had changed. So we got them to look at that reasoning and logic again and reconduct a business case and some economics on it. And the world had changed, and that was the outcome. You know, basically perfect recycling, but they looked at the challenge from an ecosystem perspective. So it was all about understanding. Now, what you do has a direct impact on the waste audit. Now, from the relationship between you and your waste auditor, there's a couple of things that you need to have in place. It's nice for your waste auditor to have some skin in the game. So if you've got a waste auditor who's involved in your education program, or who owns the MRF, or who does your transport, they have buy-in and skin in the game. So it's in their interest to get this waste audit right. So they will go that extra mile to get it right. But you as a manager of the program, you need to actually get involved and have participation in it. And that's how you will guarantee good outcomes. Now, you need to do your homework for anything. So do your homework when the waste audit's coming, get involved, and also be willing to act on the results. So there are three key things that you've got to be willing to do before you press the button on your waste audit. Now I'm going to take a few steps back. When you're commissioning your waste audit, you really need to ask yourself a question: what is it that I want out of this audit? And that's critical because that determines your waste audit categories, and it determines how you approach it. Now, many people will tell you, the more categories, the better. I don't agree with that, because it's almost like a pizza with a lot, right? You want concise data that answers your question, okay? The greater amount of waste audit categories, the greater risk you have of overlapping categories. And once you've got overlapping categories, then you've got qualitative judgments, and that weakens your data. The moment you've got more categories, you've actually got ambiguous categories. So that's another problem that you don't want to have. And if you've got 75 to 100 audit categories, well, guess what? You've got a lot of noise when you really only want to ask yourself 3 or 4 questions. So, put some real thought into it. And I always have this analogy in the back of my head, and I'll ask people to put their hands up. And it's the pizza example. How many people do not like anchovies on their pizza? Can I just see a set of hands? That's a lot. Keep them up. Keep them up, all right? How many people hate clams on their pizza? All right? All right, see a hand. Now, tell me if I'm wrong here, but if you get a pizza with a lot and those 2 ingredients on there, that's ruined the experience for you. And that's what it's like with waste auditing categories. If you've got ridiculous categories that are not right, you're risking the integrity of your audit because of ambiguous categories and overlapping categories. So really hone in. Now, there's lots of opinion on how many things you should waste audit and the numbers, and there's lots of debate. Now, what I will tell you as a group, it does not matter if you do random sampling. It doesn't matter if you do quota sampling. It doesn't matter if you do spot sampling. What the critical thing is that whatever audit you do, you want that audit to be a true reflection of your waste stream. Otherwise, you've wasted everyone's time. So that's the critical thing. You make sure what you audit has meaning. Now, I want to tell people a little funny story here. Now, I was at a site, and what I do in the lead up to an audit, I say to myself, well, I want true data. And I do it 2 ways, right? Before I audit, I'll visit a site maybe 1 or 2 weeks before the audit to have a look in their bin. And occasionally, if I can't do that, I'll organise it with our people to pick up the bin and just put it on a transfer station. I'll have a look at it. And I'll do that to ensure that I've done my homework and I know what to expect. Now, in this example, I went and inspected a site, and they're 2 employees. And when they saw me, they panicked. And they panicked because they thought, we're going to fail this audit, right? So, you know what? It's not a pass or fail exercise. It is about understanding what's really happening. So, there's some issues about it, but you want the truth, all right? That's critical. And do your homework, do your background research. Now, please get involved in your audits. If you're going to commission an audit, get involved. Now, my approach is that every audit I do, I invite the key stakeholders to either observe the audit or participate in the audit. And you know what? If your auditor says to you, no, don't come, we'll handle that ourselves, it's dangerous, go away, well, guess what? You've got the wrong auditor. Now, the reason I'm strong on this is because I've had 2 experiences. And one experience was where I had an audit and I had someone participating who was actually managing the site. And we had these rags. There was a couple of hundred of them. And to me, they were just textiles, and that's all I was going to categorise them. And he was picking the rags up, and there was shock. And I couldn't work it out why. But what he told me is that each rag was worth $40, right? So if that stakeholder was not involved in that audit, that opportunity would have been missed because it would have been recorded as textiles, right? The other experience I've had with a key stakeholder is I've done an audit and someone's walked up to me with Oh, I don't want to say what it is, but they've come up and they've said to Manny, look at this. It's worth $1,500 and we've got 6 of them here. All right? So your stakeholder involvement is critical. They will see things that you will not. So all stakeholders should be welcomed with open arms, and that's what we do with our teams. Now I'll tell you another story, and it's about acting on results. I did an audit. Yeah, this is the last slide. All right, now this is an example where I did an audit and we found an incredible amount of alcohol in the bin. And the stakeholder was shocked because clearly systems were not being followed and protocols were not being followed. But the following year, I can tell you now, that disappeared out of the bin. It's like alcohol never existed in their waste stream. And that's critical because whatever audit you do, you want to act on it. We want to do audits and we want to see change. You want to see change. Now, if you're not going to be acting on the results, you're wasting people's time. You're wasting our time. You're wasting your own time. So make sure you design an audit that is meaningful, that you can make strategic decisions and investments on, and things that you can act on and achieve your goals. That's the most important thing here. Look, I'm Manny Manatakis. I'm here for today and tomorrow. We've run out of time, but maybe a couple of questions. And if people, just grab me if you want to ask me a question off mic. So, yeah.